I stared at the confirmation screen on my phone. $5,000. Sent. It was the final tuition payment for my sister, Lauren. The last installment of a $36,000 debt I never signed up for, but somehow inherited anyway. For 3 years, that number had been a noose around my neck, tightening every semester. Now, finally, the balance was zero. I didn't feel happy. I felt light, the kind of light you feel when you finally put down a heavy pack after hiking miles in the wrong direction. I pulled into the driveway of my mother's condo, the high-end, gated fortress. I paid the homeowner association fees for expecting quiet, maybe a thank you, maybe just silence. Instead, I saw the front door wide open. Black garbage bags lined the hallway like body bags. My clothes, my books, my life, wrapped in plastic and tossed aside. I walked in. My mother, Kathleen, was standing in the living room, directing her boyfriend, Patrick, as he dismantled my bookshelf. Patrick didn't even look up. He just kept unscrewing the frame, humming to himself. "What is this?" I asked. My voice was calm, too calm. Kathleen turned. She was holding a glass of red wine, the expensive kind I'd bought for her birthday last week. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the smile of a landlord evicting a tenant who had outlived their usefulness. "Oh, good, you're here," she said, swirling the wine. "Patrick needs the room for his home gym. You don't need it anymore, right?" I blinked. "I live here." "Not anymore," she said lightly. "Lauren's tuition is paid. Your job is done. Get out." The transaction was complete. I had served my purpose. "You can't be serious," I said. "I paid the rent this morning." "Consider it a parting gift," she laughed. "Now go. You're cluttering up the place." I stepped forward. "I'm not leaving until you explain why you're throwing me out the second the check cleared." Her smile vanished. Her eyes went hard shark eyes, dead and cold. I said, "Get out." She lunged. Her arm snapped forward, and the wineglass left her hand. It shattered against my cheekbone. Red wine splashed across my white shirt like blood. A shard of glass sliced the skin just below my eye. The sting was sharp, immediate, and hot. My pulse didn't even spike. Panic is a reaction to the unexpected. This was just the final shipment arriving at the wrong dock. I touched my cheek, looked at the blood on my fingers, and felt something inside me snap. Not a break. A realignment. Patrick laughed from the floor. "Better listen to your mother, Jada. She's got a mean arm." I looked at them. Really looked at them. The woman who birthed me, and the man who was currently replacing my furniture with weights. They weren't family. They were parasites who had just realized the host was waking up. "Okay," I said. I turned around and walked out the door. "Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community." The door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the sterile hallway. I didn't stop. I walked straight to my car, the same beat-up sedan I'd driven since college because every spare dollar had gone into that condo. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline. I pulled down the vanity mirror. The cut on my cheek was small, a thin red line, but the surrounding skin was already swelling. I stared at my reflection. This was it. The moment I had been subconsciously preparing for since I was 16. I reached into the glove box and pulled out a small, waterproof pouch. My passport, my birth certificate, a thumb drive with scanned copies of my tax returns. I hadn't packed a bag. I hadn't taken my clothes, but I had my identity. The smell of wine lingered on my shirt, sour and cloying. I looked up at the condo windows. The lights were on. I imagined them in there, Kathleen pouring herself another glass. Patrick testing the weight of the dumbbells he hadn't paid for. They were probably laughing, discussing paint colors for the new gym. They thought this was just another fight. Another Tuesday where Jada gets mad, drives around for an hour, and comes back to apologize for being difficult. Because that's what I did. That's what I was programmed to do. Object constancy. I remembered reading about it in a psychology elective I took years ago. It's the ability to understand that a person still exists and has value even when they aren't physically present or gratifying your immediate needs. Narcissists don't have it. To them, people are like toasters. You don't love a toaster, you love toast. When the toaster breaks, or when you're done eating, the toaster goes in the trash. I was the toaster. And the toast Lauren's tuition was done. My phone buzzed. It was Kathleen. "You're being dramatic. Come back and clean up this mess you made on the carpet." I stared at the screen. No apology. No concern that she'd just assaulted me, just in order to clean the stain caused by her violence. Responding required an emotional investment I no longer possessed. Blocking her would be a reaction. I chose inaction. I just set the phone down. For years, I had believed that if I just paid enough, did enough, sacrificed enough, I would earn my place. I thought I was buying love, but I was just paying rent for a space in her life that was never really mine. The lease was up. I started the car. The engine sputtered, then caught. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't going back. Not tonight, not ever. As I pulled out of the complex, passing the security gate I paid for, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't grief. It was lighter than that. It was the feeling of a heavy chain finally snapping under tension. I touched the cut on my face again. It stung, sharp and real. A receipt for services rendered. I drove toward the highway, the city lights blurring past me. I needed a plan. I needed a place to sleep. But mostly, I needed to make sure they never saw a dime from me again. I drove for an hour without a destination, the adrenaline slowly fading into a numb, cold shock. The city lights fell away, replaced by the darker stretches of the suburban sprawl. My phone sat in the passenger seat, silent. Kathleen hadn't called. Patrick hadn't called. They weren't worried. They were probably relieved. The trash was taking itself out. I pulled into a 24-hour diner parking lot, killed the engine, and leaned my head back against the seat. $36,000. I said the number out loud, testing its weight. 36,000. It was more than my car, more than a down payment on a modest house. It was 3 years of skipped vacations, packed lunches, and overtime shifts. It was the price of admission to a family that never really wanted me. Why did I do it? Why did I keep paying even when Kathleen forgot my birthday 2 years in a row? Even when she criticized my job, my clothes, my lack of a serious boyfriend like Patrick, because I was buying safety. I closed my eyes and saw myself at 12 years old, bringing home a report card with straight A's. Kathleen had glanced at it and said, "At least you're good for something." That was the contract, signed in childhood ink. Be useful, and you get to stay. Be profitable, and you get a seat at the table. Stop paying, and you disappear. It's called fawning. I'd read about it late one night when I was trying to understand why I couldn't say no to her. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. When you can't fight the predator because she's your mother, and you can't flee because you're a child, you fawn. You become pleasing. You become indispensable. You pay the tuition, so she smiles. You pay the homeowner fees so she doesn't scream. You build your own cage and thank her for the lock. But the lock was broken now. The glass had shattered it. I touched the bandage I'd applied in the car mirror. It was throbbing. Good. Let it hurt. I needed to remember this feeling. I looked at my phone. Still no messages from Kathleen, but there was a notification from my bank app. The auto pay for next month's utility bill was scheduled for tomorrow. I opened the app. My thumb hovered over the cancel button. For a second, the old panic flared. If I do this, she'll be furious. She'll call. She'll scream. Then I remembered the wine glass flying toward my face, the sound of it breaking, the look in her eyes, not anger, but dismissal. I tapped cancel. Then I went to the scheduled transfers. The association fee. Cancel. The car insurance for her Lexus. Cancel. The streaming services Patrick used. Cancel. I didn't stop there. I went to the user settings and removed her access to my Netflix account. I changed the password to my Amazon Prime. I went down the list of every small, invisible tether I had used to bind myself to them, and I severed them one by one. It wasn't revenge. It was an amputation. To survive the infection, I had to cut off the limb. I put the phone down. The silence in the car felt different now. It wasn't empty. It was spacious. I wasn't going to a hotel. A hotel was temporary. A hotel was for people who were traveling. I wasn't traveling. I was escaping. I started the car and turned onto the on-ramp for the interstate, heading north. I knew where I was going. I hadn't been there in 10 years, not since the divorce, but I remembered the way. It was the only place I knew that didn't feel like a transaction. Randy's farm. I was 20 miles outside the city limits when my phone buzzed again. I glanced at it, bracing myself for another demand from Kathleen. But the name on the screen wasn't hers. Lauren. My stomach tightened. Lauren was the golden child, the reason I'd drained my savings. The sister who had quietly accepted my money for 3 years while I wore thrift store clothes. I expected a text asking where I was, or maybe echoing Kathleen's anger. I I picked up the phone. It was a picture. It was a photo of the living room floor. Shattered glass glittered in the flash, surrounded by the dark stain of the wine. In the corner of the frame, I could see Kathleen's foot, still planted in the same spot. Below the photo was a message. I saw what she did. I'm so sorry, Jada. I called Dad. I stared at the words, unable to process them. I called Dad. Randy, our father, the man Kathleen had painted as a deadbeat for the last decade. According to her, he'd walked out on us, moved to the country to play farmer, and never sent a dime. I hadn't spoken to him since I was 16 because every time I tried, Kathleen would weep about how he abandoned us. Why would Lauren call him? What could he do? He was broke. He was useless. That was the family lore. Before I could type a reply, the phone rang. Dad flashed on the screen. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the decline button. The old conditioning whispered that answering him was a betrayal of my mother. But the cut on my cheek throbbed, a reminder that my loyalty had only earned me a scar. I answered. Jada? His voice was rough, breathless. Jada, are you okay? Lauren said she hurt you. I'm fine, I said, my voice flat. I'm leaving. Where are you going? I don't know. A hotel. No, he said firmly. No hotels. Come home. Come to the farm. Dad, I can't. I don't have time for this. I need to figure out my finances. Mom just kicked me out and... I know, he interrupted. Lauren told me everything. She told me about the tuition payments. He paused, and I heard a sound I didn't recognize. A ragged intake of breath. Jada, why were you paying her tuition? Because you didn't, I snapped. The anger flared, hot and sudden. Because someone had to. Kathleen said you stopped sending checks years ago. Silence. Long, heavy silence. She said what? His voice was dangerously quiet. She said you were broke. She said you didn't care. Jada, he said, and his voice broke. I have sent a check for $1,500 every single month for the last 10 years. I sent extra for tuition. I sent birthday money. I sent Christmas money. I never saw it, I whispered. I know, he said. I know that now. She sent the letters back. She told me you guys didn't want to talk to me. She said you were angry. She said she was putting the money in a trust for you. The world tilted. Financial infidelity. The term flashed in my mind. It wasn't just about hiding spending. It was about controlling the flow of resources to control the people who depended on them. The gatekeeper. Kathleen hadn't just stolen my money. She had stolen my father. She had built a wall of lies so high I couldn't see over it, and she made me pay for the bricks. Come home, he said again. Please. I have the bank records. I can prove it. I looked at the road ahead. The darkness wasn't empty anymore. It was hiding monsters I hadn't even known existed. I'm coming, I said. I hung up and pressed the accelerator. The numbness was gone. In its place was a cold, hard fury. Kathleen hadn't just used me. She had robbed me. She had played us all against each other, the martyr mother, the deadbeat dad, the golden child, and the scapegoat. But the scapegoat was coming back. And she wasn't alone. It was nearly midnight when I turned onto the gravel road leading to Randy's farm. The air smelled of wet earth and pine needles, a stark contrast to the sterile, climate-controlled scent of Kathleen's condo. The farmhouse was lit up like a beacon. As I parked, the front door flew open. Randy was there before I could even unbuckle my seatbelt. He looked older than I remembered, grayer, but his hug was solid, smelling of sawdust and rain. I've got you, he whispered into my hair. You're safe. I let him hold me for a moment, just long enough to remember what a father was supposed to feel like. Then I pulled back. I didn't want comfort. I wanted ammunition. Show me the records, I said. We sat at his kitchen table, a battered oak slab covered in papers. It was messy, chaotic, and real. Randy pushed a stack of bank statements toward me. I went through them with the cold precision of a supply chain manager auditing a failing vendor. Line after line, check number after check number. $1,500, $2,000 for tuition, $500 for Christmas, every single month. For 10 years, I sent them to a P.O. box she set up, Randy explained, his voice thick with shame. She said it was for your privacy. She said she was putting it into a high-yield savings account for when you girls were ready to buy houses. I did the math in my head. $1,500 a month for 10 years was $180,000, plus the extra tuition checks, plus the gifts. She had taken over $200,000 from him. And then she had taken $36,000 from me. She was double dipping, I said, my voice flat. She was cashing your checks for tuition, and then telling me you didn't pay, so I would pay it again. Randy put his head in his hands. I should have known. I should have fought harder to see you. She told us you didn't want to see us, I said. She told us you were busy with your new life. My life is growing plants, Jada. I've been waiting for you to come home for a decade. I looked at the stack of papers. This wasn't just bad parenting. This wasn't just toxicity. This was felony fraud, embezzlement, theft by deception. We need a lawyer, I said. The next morning, we sat in the office of a family law attorney named Mr. Henderson. He was a sharp-eyed man who listened to our story without interrupting. When I laid out the spreadsheet I'd created overnight, Randy's payments versus my payments versus the actual costs, he let out a low whistle. This is substantial, Henderson said. We're looking at fraud, conversion of funds, and potentially elder financial abuse depending on how she positioned the spousal support. I don't care about the spousal support, Randy said. I want Jada's money back. We'll get it all back, Henderson said. But we need to move fast. If she realizes you two are talking, she might try to hide the assets. She won't realize, I said. She thinks I'm at a hotel crying. She thinks she broke me. I pulled my laptop out of my bag. I need to draft a demand letter, but not just for the money, for everything. I spent the next hour working with Henderson, drafting a lawsuit that was less a legal document and more a tactical nuke. We listed every stolen check, every fraudulent claim. We attached the photos of the text messages where she claimed Randy was a deadbeat. When we were done, Henderson looked at me. You're very calm for someone who just found out their mother is a criminal. I'm not calm, I said. I'm organized. I looked at Randy. She's going to come for us. When she realizes the auto pay is off and the money is gone, she's going to come here. She knows this is the only place I'd go. Randy's jaw set. Let her come. This isn't her condo, Jada. This is my land, and she has no power here. We drove back to the farm. I spent the afternoon helping Randy in the greenhouse, potting seedlings. The feel of the dirt on my hands was grounding. It was real work, creating real life, not the artificial performance Kathleen demanded. As the sun began to set, I saw a cloud of dust on the horizon. A black Lexus was tearing down the gravel road, driving too fast. She's here, I said. Randy wiped his hands on a rag. Stay behind me. No, I said. I stood up, brushing the soil from my jeans. I'm done hiding. I walked out to the driveway just as the Lexus skidded to a halt. Kathleen got out, looking out of place in her designer heels and white pants. Patrick was with her, looking annoyed that he'd been dragged into the country. She marched toward us, her face twisted in a snarl I knew well. You ungrateful little brat, she screamed. You canceled the utility bill. You canceled the insurance. She didn't even look at Randy. She didn't see the man she'd robbed for a decade. She only saw me, the broken appliance that had dared to unplug itself. I did, I said calmly. Turn it back on right now. And transfer me the rent money you owe for this month, or I swear to God I will call the police and tell them you stole my jewelry. It was such a tired, predictable threat, the kind of thing that used to make me panic. Now, it just sounded pathetic. You're not calling anyone, Kathleen, Randy said. His voice was deep, resonating from his chest. She stopped. She finally looked at him. For a second, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. Stay out of this, Randy, she spat. This is between me and my daughter. No, I said. It's between you, me, and the forensic accountant we just hired. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope Henderson had given me. You're trespassing, I said, and you're about to be served. Kathleen stared at the envelope in my hand. For a moment the silence was absolute, broken only by the wind rustling the pine trees. Patrick shifted his weight, looking from me to Randy, his earlier arrogance replaced by a dawning realization that he was in over his head. What is that? Kathleen demanded, though her voice wavered. She didn't reach for it. It's a lawsuit, I said, stepping closer. For fraud, embezzlement, and conversion of funds. We know about the checks, Mom. We know about the post office box. We know you've been stealing from Dad for 10 years. Stealing? She laughed, a high, brittle sound. I was managing our finances. I was protecting you girls from a man who abandoned you. I didn't abandon anyone, Randy roared. You blocked me. You returned my letters. You stole $200,000 meant for their future. It was my money, she screamed, her face contorting. I raised them. I did the work. You just wrote checks. I deserved every penny for putting up with your... She trailed off, realizing she had just confessed. Patrick took a step back. Wait, you told me you invested well. You said the condo was paid off. It is paid off, Kathleen snapped. With my money. With my money, I corrected. And Dad's money. And Lauren's tuition money. Kathleen turned her glare back to me. You ungrateful little. I gave you a home. I let you live in luxury. You let me pay for a luxury I didn't want, I said. And now you're going to pay us back. I thrust the envelope into her chest. She had to grab it or let it fall. She grabbed it. Read it, I said. Or don't. But you have 30 days to respond before we move for a default judgment. And just so you know, we've already filed for a freeze on your assets. You can't do that, she whispered. I have bills. I have the club membership. Cancel them, I said. Just like I canceled the Netflix. Jada, please, she said, switching tactics instantly. Her eyes filled with tears, the same performance I'd seen 1,000 times. I'm your mother. You can't destroy me. We're family. Family protects you, I said, my voice steady. Family doesn't throw wine glasses at your face. It was an accident. I was stressed. It was assault, a new voice said. We all turned. Lauren was standing on the porch of the farmhouse. She looked pale, but her eyes were dry. She walked down the steps and stood next to me. Lauren? Kathleen's voice cracked. Baby, tell them. Tell them I'm a good mother. Lauren looked at her. I saw the texts, Mom. I saw you laughing about kicking Jada out. I saw you telling Patrick you were glad the cash cow was finally empty. Kathleen flinched as if she'd been struck. I never. That was a joke. It wasn't funny, Lauren said. She reached out and took my hand. We're done, Mom. We're both done. Kathleen looked at the three of us, Randy, solid and angry, me, cold and resolved, and Lauren, her golden child, finally seeing the tarnish. She was completely isolated. The narrative she had controlled for a decade had shattered. She looked at Patrick for support. He was already walking back to the car. I'm not getting involved in a fraud case, he muttered. I'm out. Patrick, she shrieked. Patrick, wait. He didn't wait. He got in the passenger seat and slammed the door. Kathleen stood there for a moment longer, clutching the lawsuit to her chest. She looked small, mean, but small. You'll regret this, she hissed at me. You'll come crawling back when you realize nobody else will ever love you like I do. I hope not, I said, because your love costs too much. She turned and marched back to the car, her heels sinking into the dirt. She drove away without looking back, leaving a cloud of dust that settled slowly over the fields. I watched her go. I waited for the guilt, for the panic, for the old urge to fix it. But there was nothing, just the quiet hum of the farm and the warmth of my sister's hand in mine. The fallout was swift and brutal. With her assets frozen and the lawsuit moving forward, Kathleen couldn't keep up the charade. She tried to countersue, claiming the money was a gift, but the text messages and forged checks told a different story. Her lawyer dropped her within a week. To avoid a criminal trial that would have put her in prison, she agreed to a settlement. She had to sell the condo, the pristine, gated fortress she loved more than her children, to pay restitution. She ended up in a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Patrick, true to form, never called her again. The gym he wanted so badly never got built. I didn't visit her. Lauren didn't visit her. We heard through a cousin that she spends her days telling anyone who will listen that her ungrateful daughters abandoned her after she gave them everything. She's still the victim in her own story. But that's her story, not mine. My story is here, at the nursery. I used my supply chain experience to help Randy modernize his inventory system. We started selling direct-to-consumer online, and business is booming. For the first time in his life, he's not just surviving, he's thriving. Lauren transferred to a local college nearby. She lives in the farmhouse with Dad, and we have dinner together every Sunday. Real dinners, with laughter and burnt garlic bread and no wine glasses being thrown. As for me, I bought a small fixer-upper down the road. It's not fancy. The floors creak, and the paint is peeling in the kitchen. But the deed is in my name. The locks are mine. And when I walk through the door at night, nobody tells me to get out. Yesterday, I planted a young oak tree in my front yard. Randy helped me dig the hole. You know, he said, wiping sweat from his forehead, trees need good soil to put down roots. If the ground is toxic, they just wither. I know, I said. I'm changing the soil. I patted the dirt around the sapling. It was small now, but it would grow. It would take time, and patience, and care, but one day it would be strong enough to weather any storm. Just like me. I didn't just buy my freedom with that final check. I bought my self-respect. I bought the knowledge that I am not an appliance, or a bank account, or a scapegoat. I am Jada, and for the first time in my life, I am exactly where I belong. If you've ever had to buy your own freedom, share this story. You are not alone.